Christmas meant nothing to him until an Apache woman showed him holiness without a church. Ethan Cole walked through the streets of Nova Rita, his boots crunching on the frozen glass like snow. The colony glimmered under artificial lights, domed buildings reflecting the cold white of the planet's surface. Outside, the aurora of Nova Rita danced in pale green and blue, but Ethan barely noticed. His mind was somewhere else, tangled in memories he preferred to forget. The colony was busy with preparations for the virtual Christmas celebration. Drones floated overhead, carrying holographic banners that read Merry Christmas in every human language. Small robots decorated every corner with artificial snowflakes and glowing lights. Colonists, dressed in warm insulated suits, moved briskly, placing ornaments and exchanging polite nods. The scene was lively, almost cheerful, but for Ethan it was hollow. He ignored the decorations. He ignored the cheerful chatter. He ignored the invitation from the colony coordinator to join the virtual feast. He didn't even want to see the holographic projection of Santa dancing above the plaza. Christmas had never meant much to him. Not on Earth. Not here. Ethan's thoughts drifted back to his childhood, to a city far away and a family long gone. He had grown up in a small apartment in New Chicago, where winter meant bitter wind and empty streets. His parents had tried to celebrate, but grief lingered like a shadow over every gift and every carol. When his father died suddenly during a winter storm, Christmas became a reminder of loneliness. He swore then that he would never believe in the holiday again, not even in its memory. In Nova Rita, the memory felt distant but still heavy. The colony offered comfort and technology beyond what Earth had ever imagined. Artificial sunlight, warmth in every dome, food grown in vertical gardens, but it could not heal the emptiness he carried inside. Efficiency and order filled the halls of the colony, yet warmth, the kind that comes from connection, seemed to escape him. Ethan's work as a senior engineer kept him busy most days. He maintained life support systems, repaired drones, and monitored the energy grids that kept the colony alive in the harsh exoplanet environment. It was precise, logical work. Nothing about it required emotion. Nothing about it demanded kindness. And for Ethan, that was exactly the way he liked it. Yet, as the sunless day wore on, the emptiness in his chest grew heavier. The snow outside the dome shimmered in green light, but it only reminded him of how far he felt from anything sacred, anything real. He wondered if humans could survive without rituals, without holidays, without faith. Could they survive with only machines and schedules? He doubted it. Ethan passed the colony market, a wide hall where merchants displayed exotic foods grown in zero-gravity hydroponics. Holograms of candy canes and stars floated above the stalls. Children ran by, laughing at the projected images of Santa Claus in his sleigh. Their laughter grated on Ethan's nerves. He had no patience for joy that felt forced, for happiness simulated by programs and lights. "Morning, Mr. Cole," called a young technician, waving a hand. "Come join the Christmas countdown." Ethan shook his head. "Not today," he muttered, his voice cold, distant. He didn't even slow his pace. The technician frowned but said nothing more. Most people in the colony had learned not to push him. Ethan was known for his work, for his efficiency, and for his refusal to engage in celebrations. He was reliable but isolated. As he walked, he noticed a few colonists pausing to admire the outside view, taking in the green auroras above the icy plains. Ethan looked up briefly but quickly lowered his eyes. There's beauty in the sky, yes, but beauty did not mend the heart. Not his heart. Later in the engineering bay, Ethan worked on recalibrating the oxygen filters. The hum of the machines filled the room, steady and predictable. He preferred the company of machinery to that of people. Machines did not demand warmth or conversation. Machines did not celebrate meaningless holidays. Machines simply worked. Yet, as he tightened the last panel on a filtration unit, a small voice inside him whispered something unfamiliar. A question. A doubt. Why do I feel so empty even when everything is provided? He ignored it. He always ignored it. Ethan's routine that evening took him to the edge of the dome where the colony ended, and the frozen wilderness of Nova Rita began. He often went there when he needed to think. The wind was sharper here, carrying the scent of ice and strange alien minerals. The stars above were brighter, unfiltered by city lights. And here he felt small. But small felt better than hollow. He paused, watching the shifting lights of the aurora. It was mesmerizing, and for a moment a memory rose unbidden. A cold winter night on Earth, his mother humming softly while placing a candle on the windowsill. The warmth, the quiet, the feeling of being seen. He shook his head. That was long ago. Gone. meaningless. Ethan turned to head back inside when he noticed someone moving through the snow. A figure, small but purposeful, walked with calm certainty. The figure wore a mix of traditional and modern clothing, a subtle blend of patterns that reminded him vaguely of Earth's old tribal designs. The snow crunched lightly under her boots, yet she moved with grace, almost as if she belonged to the wilderness rather than the dome. Curiosity nudged at Ethan. He had seen few visitors outside the domes this close to the holidays. Most preferred the warmth of controlled environments. He watched as she paused, knelt down, and touched the snow lightly, murmuring words he could not understand. "Hello?" Ethan called, his voice cautious but curious. The woman turned slowly, and her eyes met his. They were dark, calm, and filled with a quiet strength. She smiled gently, without the need for explanation. "Hello," she said, her voice soft but clear. "I didn't mean to startle you." There was something different about her, something unafraid of the emptiness he carried, something untouched by the colony's sterile order. She exuded a warmth he had long forgotten existed. "I'm Ethan," he said finally, keeping his tone neutral. "I'm Island," she replied. "I study the ways humans find meaning, even here, on a planet so far from home." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Meaning? Out here?" Island nodded, her gaze drifting to the aurora above. "Yes, even here. Holiness doesn't need walls or candles or choirs. It exists where you notice, where you care, where you are aware." Ethan frowned, instinctively skeptical. He had spent decades relying on logic, machines, and facts. Words like holiness felt irrelevant. Yet he could not deny the calm certainty in her voice, the genuine connection she seemed to have with the world around her. He said nothing. Aylin continued, kneeling to trace a small pattern in the snow. "Even a single breath, taken with awareness, can be holy. Even the light of the aurora can be sacred if you notice it. You don't need a building, or a book, or a ritual. You only need to see." Ethan felt a strange tug at his chest. He did not understand it. He did not want to, yet he could not look away. Her words, her calm, her connection to the world, pierced through the walls he had built around himself. The snow continued to fall gently, covering the tracks of both of them. For a moment there was silence. The silence was not empty, it was alive, and Ethan realized something he had not felt in years. Curiosity. Curiosity about what this woman believed. Curiosity about whether he could feel something more than emptiness. Curiosity about the world beyond the walls of technology and routine. Ethan shook his head, trying to dismiss the feeling. He was not here to be changed. He was here to survive, to work, and to endure. Yet a small thought lingered at the edge of his mind. Could Christmas mean something if I let it? He pushed the thought away. Not yet. Not today. But as he walked back to the warmth of the domes, he found himself glancing at the snowy horizon again. The aurora shimmered, bright and eternal, and a part of him, a part he had long buried, felt awake. It was a faint spark, almost invisible against the vast cold of Nova Arita. Yet it was enough to stir him, enough to hint that perhaps, this Christmas, something could be different. Ethan Cole returned to his quarters that night, alone, yet not entirely empty. And somewhere in the quiet of the frozen planet, a small question took root in his heart. Maybe there is more to this world than machines, screens, and efficiency. Maybe there is something worth noticing after all. The next morning, the sky above Nova Arita was pale green, streaked with the soft glow of the planet's twin suns. The colony's domes gleamed faintly under the light, but Ethan Cole did not linger inside. Sleep had not eased the restlessness in his chest. The encounter with Island the night before had stirred something he could not name, a flicker of curiosity, a strange pull toward the wilderness beyond the domes. He dressed in his thick insulated suit, checked his oxygen levels, and stepped outside. The snow crunched under his boots and the cold wind whipped against his face. Yet the cold felt alive, invigorating, unlike the artificial warmth inside the colony. He walked toward the outskirts, where the frozen plains stretched endlessly, silent except for the distant hum of machinery from the colony. Ethan had not gone far when he saw her again. Island. She was kneeling near a frozen stream, her gloved hands hovering over the water as if she were feeling its life. The ice was thin in places, revealing a slow current beneath, and sunlight shimmered on its surface. She looked serene, entirely absorbed in the moment, unaware of Ethan's approach. "You're back," she said without turning. Her voice carried easily over the cold wind. "I wondered if you would come." Ethan paused a few meters away. I was curious, he admitted. He felt awkward saying the word. Curious. It was not a word he used often. Curious about what you're doing. Aylin smiled, finally turning to face him. Her dark eyes seemed to hold the depth of the sky itself. I am watching the water. Feeling the planet. There is life here, even under the ice. It is easy to miss if you do not stop and notice. Ethan frowned. He wanted to argue, to dismiss it as nonsense. Science explained the movement of water, the flow beneath the ice, the light reflecting off the surface, but he could not deny the calm it brought to him, the way it seemed to slow his racing thoughts. You make it sound like holiness, he said reluctantly. Island's smile widened, gentle and knowing. Perhaps it is, not the kind taught in churches or schools, but a kind that exists everywhere if we pay attention. Holiness is noticing. Holiness is gratitude. Holiness is life itself. Ethan crossed his arms, trying to hide the tug at his chest. He had spent years believing in only what he could see, touch, measure. Yet Aylin's presence made him feel something he had not felt in a long time. Possibility. Show me, he said finally. He did not know why he said it. Perhaps it was defiance. Perhaps it was hope. Perhaps it was the first spark of a belief that he could not yet name. Aylin's eyes brightened. She rose gracefully and beckoned him to follow. Then come, she said. I will show you. But you must leave doubt at the dome. Out here doubt is heavy. It weighs more than the cold. Ethan hesitated, then nodded. Together they stepped across the frozen stream, careful where the ice was thin. The wind howled softly around them, carrying the scent of minerals and ice. For a moment Ethan felt as though the colony, with its lights and machines, was a distant dream. Here the planet was alive, and he could feel it under his feet, through the crunch of snow and the subtle vibrations of frozen water. Aylin led him along a narrow ridge overlooking the plains. From there the frozen horizon stretched endlessly, broken only by jagged ice formations and occasional clusters of hardy alien flora. She stopped at a small rise, pointing to the vast expanse below. Look, she said, everything here is alive. Everything has a purpose. Even the wind, even the snow, even the silence. Ethan squinted, seeing only ice and snow. I see nothing but cold. Aylin shook her head gently. You see only what you allow yourself to see. Look again, slowly. Not with your eyes. With your mind. With your heart. He hesitated. He had no idea what she meant. Slowly he unclenched his fists, took a deep breath, and tried to notice. The way the wind sculpted the snow, the glint of ice catching sunlight, the faint movement of creatures beneath the frozen surface, tiny details he had ignored. It is beautiful, he admitted quietly. His voice sounded strange to him, soft and almost reverent. Aylin nodded. Yes, that is holiness. Not in buildings or words, but in the world itself. The planet, the sky, the snow, and in every small choice we make to notice and care. They walked further into the plains. Aylin paused to pick up a piece of ice, examining the bubbles trapped inside. Life finds a way, she said. Even in frozen places, even where we think nothing can survive. Ethan listened. He felt the words sink into him in a way he had never expected. He was used to thinking in facts, in logic, in efficiency, yet here, in this silence, with someone who truly noticed the world, he felt something else, a warmth, not in his body, but in his mind. You've lived without this before? He asked, curiosity breaking through his usual reserve. Aylin smiled softly. I have seen many ways humans forget to notice. They live in domes, in routines, in screens, and they forget the sacredness of life. That is why I came here. To remind people. To remind myself. Ethan frowned, a question forming. And you think I can learn this? That I can feel it? Yes, she said firmly. If you let yourself. You only need to open your eyes and heart. That is all. The rest comes naturally. For the first time in years, Ethan felt a strange, quiet hope. He had spent so long thinking that happiness, belief, or meaning had to come from others, from instructions, from structured rituals. And now he wondered if perhaps it could come from him, if he could find holiness simply by noticing, by caring, by existing fully in the world around him. They stopped by a small grove of alien trees, their branches shimmering under the weak light. Snow clung to the branches, glinting like tiny diamonds. Aylin knelt, placing her hands lightly on the snow-covered ground. Feel it, she whispered. Listen. Ethan knelt beside her, unsure what to do. He closed his eyes and felt the wind against his face, the cold, biting but not cruel, the tiny tremble of snow underfoot. He listened to the distant hum of ice shifting, the soft whisper of wind through the frozen trees. For the first time in decades, he felt present, fully alive in the moment. "This is peace," he said quietly. "I never thought I could feel this." Aelin smiled. "Peace is not a gift from machines or domes. It is a gift from noticing, from being awake. You do not need a church to feel sacred. You only need to exist fully in the world and recognize it." Ethan stayed silent, letting her words sink in. He felt something shifting inside him, something he had buried beneath years of loneliness and skepticism. The cold of Nova Arita was harsh, but it had awakened warmth in a way he never expected. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the icy plains, Aelin guided him back toward the dome. "Tomorrow we will go further," she said. "There are more wonders to notice, more lessons to learn, and maybe, just maybe, you will see that Christmas can mean something even here, without lights or gifts." Ethan nodded, but he said nothing. His mind was full, yet calm. He had spent years building walls around himself, walls against hope, against faith, against joy. Yet, with Aelin, he felt those walls cracking, letting in something he had long denied himself. Back in the colony, the artificial warmth felt different, not comforting but familiar. He walked past the bustling colonists preparing for the virtual celebration and felt detached, yet not empty. There was a space inside him, small but real, where curiosity and wonder had begun to grow. Ethan spent the evening alone in his quarters, looking out at the aurora again. It seemed brighter now, alive in a way it had not been before. He thought of Aelin, of the frozen plains, of the quiet holiness she had shown him. And though he did not yet understand it fully, he felt a flicker of hope that he could experience something more than cold machinery and empty tradition. For the first time in a long time, Ethan considered the possibility that Christmas might mean something after all. Not the celebrations of the colony, not the artificial lights or holograms, but something deeper, something alive, something that could be felt without rules, without buildings, without ceremonies. And in the quiet of his room, he made a small, silent promise to himself. Tomorrow, he would return to the plains. Tomorrow he would learn more. Tomorrow he would begin to notice. And maybe, just maybe, he would begin to believe again. The following day, the pale green light of Nova Arita's twin suns barely pierced the frozen haze. Ethan Cole dressed quickly, excitement and curiosity mingling strangely with the chill in his bones. Last night, he had thought about Aelin's words for hours. Holiness was not in buildings, not in rituals, not in screens or machines. It was in noticing, in being fully awake to the life around him. Ethan had never thought of life this way. Even in his work as an engineer, efficiency and precision had always come first. But now he realized there was more. A layer beneath the obvious, a quiet magic hidden in the everyday. Aelin waited for him near the dome's edge, her dark hair catching the weak sunlight like threads of copper. She nodded, and without a word, led him further into the snowy plains. They walked in silence for a while, the snow crisp under their boots, the cold sharp yet invigorating. Finally, they reached a small grove of alien trees, their trunks thick and twisted, their branches shimmering with frost. Aelin knelt and touched the bark of one tree, closing her eyes. Ethan followed, unsure of what he was doing, but curious. "Close your eyes," Aelin said softly. "Listen. Breathe. Feel."
Ethan obeyed, inhaling the cold air and letting it fill his lungs.
He noticed the subtle hum of ice shifting beneath the snow. He heard the whisper of wind through the alien branches. Tiny creatures moved beneath the frost, unseen but alive. He felt the heartbeat of the world around him in a way he never had before. "It's peaceful," he admitted. His voice sounded strange to him, quiet, almost reverent. "I've never noticed this before." Aelin smiled. "Most humans don't. They live in domes, in routines, in machines. They forget that life itself is sacred, not because of words or laws, because it simply exists and we are part of it. Not separate, not above, just part." He wanted to ask more, but the words felt heavy. Instead, he breathed, letting the moment sink in. Something inside him was shifting. He realized that holiness, peace, and gratitude did not have to come from instructions. They came from noticing, from being awake, from valuing what was alive. They walked further, leaving the grove behind and climbing a ridge that overlooked a frozen valley. From here, Ethan could see the entire expanse of Nova Rita. Jagged ice formations, scattered alien flora, and the faint shimmer of a distant river beneath the ice stretched to the horizon. The aurora above danced faintly, green and blue waves moving like slow tides. "Look at it," Island said. "Do you see how everything is connected? Even the wind, even the snow, even the smallest living thing? They are all part of a whole. They have purpose, and so do we." Ethan studied the valley. He had seen it before from observation platforms, from maps and sensors. But seeing it this way, with Island pointing out details, noticing the movement and life around him, it was different, real. "Purpose?" he asked. "I thought purpose was only in work, in achievement, in making something useful." Island shook her head. "Those things are not wrong, but they are not the whole. Purpose can also be in observing, in appreciating, in choosing to see the sacredness in the ordinary. To notice is to honor life." Ethan fell silent again. He thought of the virtual Christmas celebration inside the dome. He thought of the drones and lights and artificial joy. And now he realized that those things, as impressive as they were, could never replace this feeling. The warmth in his chest, the wonder in his mind, the awareness of life itself. This was something no machine, no celebration, no dome could give. Island noticed his contemplation and smiled. "Tomorrow we will do something different," she said.
"We will share."
"Not with words or gifts, but with presence, with attention, with gratitude. That is the real meaning of holiness." "That is the real meaning of Christmas, if you choose to see it." Ethan nodded. He felt a strange anticipation, like standing on the edge of a cliff, ready to leap into something unknown but promising. As they descended into the valley, they came across a small herd of alien creatures. They were delicate, with long, thin legs and translucent skin that shimmered faintly in the cold light. The creatures moved slowly, grazing on sparse alien vegetation poking through the ice. Island knelt again and whispered softly. Ethan watched, feeling a strange reverence in the quietness of the moment. "These creatures live in the cold," Island explained. "They survive because they adapt, because they move carefully, because they notice every change in the world. We are the same, in a way. Life is survival, but survival can be beautiful if we notice it, if we care." Ethan crouched beside her, watching the creatures. He realized he had never truly watched life before. On Earth, he had lived in cities of noise and routine, barely noticing the people, the animals, the small movements of the world. Here, the life was slower, simpler, and more apparent, and he felt awe. Awe he had not felt in decades. They stayed with the herd for some time, observing, breathing, and listening to the subtle music of the planet. Ethan felt a strange joy rising in him, quiet but undeniable. It was not happiness as he had known it, not achievement or recognition. It was something deeper, more lasting. Awareness, connection, life. When the creatures moved on, Island stood and extended a hand to him. "Come, there is more to see." They climbed a ridge again, reaching a plateau where a small frozen geyser erupted faintly, spraying crystals of ice into the air. The sunlight caught them, scattering them like diamonds. Island placed her hands over her heart. "Look at it," she said softly. "All this, and it simply exists. No one commands it. No one builds it. No one teaches it. It is sacred because it is alive. And we can honor it simply by noticing it, by being here fully, by choosing to see." Ethan stood beside her, letting the moment wash over him. He felt tears rise unexpectedly, not sadness. Not joy exactly, something between awe and gratitude, a deep recognition of life he had long ignored. He realized he had never truly appreciated being alive, never truly felt the world's pulse, and now in this frozen silent wilderness he finally did. Island spoke again, quieter now. "You see, Ethan, Christmas is not about gifts, not about lights or rituals. It is about noticing, about sharing life.
About gratitude.
About awareness. About the holiness that exists in every breath, every step, every heartbeat. You do not need a church. You do not need rules. You only need to see." Ethan nodded, his mind and heart opening in a way he did not expect. He realized that he had been surviving, existing, but not truly living. And now for the first time in years he felt alive. They descended back toward the domes as the suns dipped lower, casting long shadows across the icy plains. Ethan walked beside Aylin in silence, the words they had spoken lingering between them like warm light in the cold. He thought about the colony, the virtual Christmas, the drones and holograms. None of it mattered now. Not really. What mattered was life itself, the living world, the awareness of it, the choice to see and care. Back inside the dome, Ethan felt the artificial warmth differently now. He passed the bustling colonists preparing for their celebrations, yet he did not envy them. He had discovered something deeper, something real, something sacred, and it did not need approval, it did not need recognition. It only needed him to notice. That night, Ethan returned to his quarters and sat by the window, looking out at the frozen expanse. The aurora shimmered softly above, green and blue waves moving like a quiet song. He thought of Aelin, of the creatures, of the geyser crystals sparkling in the fading light. He thought of the lesson she had given him. Holiness exists everywhere. Life itself is holy, and gratitude is the bridge that allows him to feel it. He picked up a small notebook, something he had not done in years, and began to write. He wrote about the aurora, the herd, the geyser. He wrote about the cold that felt alive. He wrote about the strange warmth in his chest, the flicker of hope he had carried back from the plains. And he wrote about Christmas not as a holiday, but as a choice to notice, to care, to be awake. For the first time in decades, Ethan felt a quiet joy. It was not loud. It did not demand recognition. It did not need a church or a ceremony. It simply existed, and that was enough. Ethan fell asleep that night with a peaceful heart, a small spark of wonder burning in the cold. He dreamed of snow, of auroras, of alien creatures grazing quietly, and of Island's calm, knowing smile. For the first time, Christmas did not feel meaningless. For the first time, he felt ready to see, to notice, to experience it fully. And in the quiet of Nova Arita, under the pale green light of distant suns, a lonely human began to awaken. The dawn broke over Nova Arita with a faint green glow. The icy plains outside the colony shimmered softly under the light of the twin suns. Ethan Cole stepped out of his quarters, pulling his insulated suit tighter against the cold. Today was different. He felt it in the weight of the air, in the sharp clarity of the snow beneath his boots, in the quiet rhythm of his own heartbeat. Island waited at the edge of the dome, her dark hair catching the pale sunlight. She looked calm, serene, but there was an expectation in her eyes, a promise of a lesson, a gift of insight, waiting for him to accept it. "You're ready," she said simply. Ethan nodded, not needing words to explain his readiness. He had spent days with her, learning to see, to notice, to feel. Now he was ready to experience something more. They walked in silence across the frozen plains, their boots crunching through the snow. The cold bit at their cheeks, but it was a living cold, sharp and invigorating. Ethan felt awake in a way he had not felt in decades. The dull emptiness that had accompanied him for years was gone, replaced with awareness and wonder. Aelin led him to a small clearing surrounded by frost-covered trees. In the center, she had arranged a simple circle of smooth stones. The snow around it had been cleared, revealing the pale earth beneath. A small fire crackled in the middle, tiny sparks flying into the icy air. The warmth of the fire contrasted with the cold around it, but it was gentle, not overwhelming. "This is our space," Island said. "Here we honor life. Here we notice. Here, we celebrate the world without needing buildings, rituals, or commands. Today we celebrate Christmas in a way that is alive, that is present, that is sacred." Ethan looked at her, absorbing her words. He thought of the virtual celebrations inside the dome, the drones, the holograms, the artificial joy. None of it mattered now. What mattered was here, now, in the cold and the quiet, surrounded by life, snow, and sky. Island gestured to the fire. "Sit," she said. "Close your eyes, feel everything. Hear everything. Notice the small things that are easy to miss." Ethan knelt beside the fire, letting its gentle warmth touch his face. He closed his eyes and listened. The faint whistle of the wind through the trees, the subtle crackle of ice in the distance, the whisper of life beneath the snow, all of it formed a quiet symphony. "This is holiness," Island whispered. "Not in a building, not in a ritual, not in a screen, but in noticing, in feeling, in being awake. Life itself is sacred. Gratitude itself is holy. And Christmas is choosing to see that, to share that, to celebrate that." Ethan felt a lump in his throat. He had spent decades thinking Christmas was meaningless. Now he realized it was not the day, the decorations, or the gifts that mattered. It was the awareness, the connection, the choice to honor life and love and presence. He opened his eyes and looked around. Snowflakes fell gently from the branches above, catching the sunlight like diamonds. Tiny creatures scurried beneath the snow, moving carefully, aware of every step. The frozen geyser in the distance shimmered faintly, scattering crystals into the pale green light. Everything breathed life. Everything mattered. Island smiled at him. Now, share it. Share the awareness, not with words, not with gifts, with presence, with attention, with gratitude. Choose to notice someone else, and you create holiness. Ethan thought for a moment. Then slowly, he reached out. He took a small hand-sized stone and placed it on the fire's edge, not as a gift, not as a possession, but as a symbol of noticing, of participating, of being present. He realized that even a simple act could be sacred. Island nodded approvingly. She picked up a handful of snow and let it melt in her palm, water dripping into the earth. Everything we touch, everything we see, everything we care for can become holy, she said. It is a choice we make. Every moment, every day. The wind shifted, carrying the faint hum of the aurora above. Ethan closed his eyes again, this time with a full heart. He thought of the colony, of the drones, of the celebrations he had ignored. They were not wrong. They were just not complete. They could not teach awareness. They could not teach gratitude. They could not teach him how to truly notice life. He had learned that here, in the cold, in the snow, in the quiet presence of Island, and in the living world around him. Time seemed to slow. Ethan watched the sun's weak glow move across the frozen plains. He noticed a small herd of alien creatures grazing carefully in the distance, their translucent skin shimmering in the sunlight. A tiny snowbird-like creature landed nearby, shaking snow from its wings. Every small movement seemed profound, sacred, alive. Island watched him quietly, letting him absorb the lesson. "You see it now, don't you?" she asked softly. "Yes," Ethan said, his voice steady but full of awe. "I see it. I see that life itself is holy." Island nodded. "And now you understand Christmas. It is not a date. It is not lights or presents. It is noticing life, sharing gratitude, being awake and aware, and connecting with what is real and living."
That is all.
Ethan took a deep breath. The air was sharp, the cold biting, yet it filled him with a strange warmth. He looked at Aelin and smiled, a genuine, unguarded smile. "I think I understand. I think I can celebrate it this way." "Good," Aelin said. "Then you are ready to bring it back if you choose. Not to the dome, not to the screens, but to people, to life, to awareness, to your own heart." They stayed in the clearing for hours, simply observing, noticing, and sharing presence. Ethan helped arrange small stones, watched the wind move patterns across the snow, laughed quietly at the small creatures moving about, and felt an unshakable connection to the living world. He realized that Christmas could be more than a holiday. It could be a daily awareness, a choice to celebrate life itself. As the sun dipped lower, Island finally stood and extended her hand. "It is time to return. But remember what you have learned. This is only the beginning." Ethan rose and followed her, feeling a quiet peace he had never known. The colony's domes came into view, lights twinkling artificially in the distance. But they no longer felt like the center of his world. The real world, the cold, alive, sacred world of Nova Arita, was where he had found meaning. Back in the colony, Ethan walked past the preparations for the virtual Christmas celebration. Colonists laughed, exchanged gifts, and admired lights. For a moment he felt a pang of separation. Then he smiled, realizing he did not need to participate in the same way. He had found a deeper celebration, one that no artificial light or drone could replicate. He returned to his quarters briefly, then stepped outside again, this time to invite a few close colleagues who had quietly admired his change over the past days. He led them to the small clearing with the stones and the fire. Together they watched the snow, noticed the aurora, and shared presence. No words were necessary. The awareness itself was enough. Ethan thought about the lessons Island had given him. Notice life, appreciate it, be present, and share your awareness. That was holiness. That was gratitude. That was Christmas. As night fell, the aurora above glimmered brighter, the stars reflecting off the frozen plains. Ethan stood in the clearing, looking at the gentle fire, the shimmering snow, and the small creatures moving quietly. He felt awe, gratitude, connection, and joy, all at once. For the first time, he truly understood. He turned to Island, who watched him with a knowing smile. "Thank you," he said softly, "for showing me this. For helping me see." Island nodded. "You did it yourself, Ethan. I only guided you. You chose to notice. You chose to be awake." That is all it takes. Ethan felt a peace settle into him, a warmth that no machine, dome, or screen could ever give. The emptiness he had carried for decades was gone, replaced with life, awareness, and the quiet joy of truly seeing. That night he returned to his quarters and wrote again in his notebook, chronicling the aurora, the snow, the creatures, and the lessons he had learned. But more than that, he wrote about gratitude, about noticing, about sharing awareness, and about the living meaning of Christmas. Ethan slept that night with a calm, full heart. For the first time, he did not feel alone. For the first time, he did not feel hollow. And for the first time, he understood that Christmas could mean something: holiness, gratitude, and awareness. Even without a church, a building, or a ritual, it was alive in him, and in every living thing around him, if only one chose to see. Nova Rita was cold. The auroras shimmered endlessly. But inside Ethan Cole there was warmth, a spark of light, a spark that could grow, a spark that could guide him every day to notice, to care, and to celebrate life. And in that quiet, sacred awareness, Christmas had found him,